So now what are we going to do?
Same thing we do every
week?
Maybe we
take over the world, Pinky?
Maybe we all just sit in silence and meditate for 30 minutes.
With the sounds of
that'd be a good episode. Mm-hmm. Okay, team. We're going to sit here and meditate.
It would be
like,
boom. That would be our test of our loyal listeners. How many downloads does the episode of literally 30 minutes of silence get? What do you think?
I think only if it's brought to you by Shiloh. Boom. Maybe
I bet Tim Wacker listens.
I bet you Tim Wacker does a lot of things that don't necessarily involve, meditation or whatnot. So maybe he needs this. Maybe this is what helps bring him across the bridge.
Yeah. I think we need a joke, like 30 minutes in. Just something.
So but now you're saying that.
Like a real loud fart. Mm-hmm. And then
Wait well, there is a style. Are we rolling?
Of course.
I think
we're always rolling.
There's a style of joke that is absolutely my number one. It's called a Shaggy Dog story.
Okay.
Have you heard of these?
Sure I have, but the fact that you have a
shtick. I got a shtick.
A fence around jokes as your deal.
Oh, I love it.
Well, when Tex checked out the Encyclopedia of Humor from the library in 2013, when his feedback was on his first cert, you need a sense of humor, pal. So he went deep diving.
But it was sense of humor, a personality, warmth, depth.
And just finished the humor book. So next, I don't know what's next. But
I'm telling you, your timing is getting better.
But
it's a shaggy dog.
It is. And here's a shaggy dog. Have you, Luke, you've definitely heard me say the swing story.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm aware of the shaggy dog because I have a Godzilla shaggy dog.
Is where you sit here and you're with a group of people and you're telling this story that just gets longer and longer, 5, 6, 7, and an 8-minute story with no punchline.
Yeah.
But the joke is
they just sat through 8 minutes.
You just rang and wasted everybody's time.
So what you're saying is that Power Athlete Radio is the world's longest shaggy dog.
It is.
Yes.
Joke.
Yes.
So we're like, I guess we got him again this week.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Oh, I love it.
All those fitness podcasters out there really, putting the axe to the grindstone to figure out how to crack the top 10, and we're just in here shaggy dogging it.
Well, the problem is when your whole life is dedicated to macros and micros and sets and reps and everything, and that's really what sets the sun and everything goes and rises. I think it gets old after a while. After you've been doing this for 7 years? We've been doing podcasts 7 years.
2014, April 2013,
2013,
April 2013.
So
I think it's April 14th, 2013.
Wow, so
that's why I keep getting it switched.
Yeah, nobody knows how long that is, but
I think it's 100 years, John.
Some days it feels like it, but I think the one thing that whenever somebody talks to me about Power Athlete Radio, the one thing that they always bring up is the diverse guest list. Mm-hmm. The fact that we have a rudimentary knowledge of a whole bunch of different things, opposed from just eat kale, eat this, green leafy vegetables, Roy G. Biv. I mean, we know that stuff too, but I think having some very diverse guests is helpful.
Yeah.
And not only for us, but also for the listeners.
And they continue to get even more diverse in 2021.
Mm-hmm. I mean, we're talking paragons of fitness like Matthew Modine. He's out there.
I mean, Vision Quest, you got to give it to him.
I do have to give it to him.
He was a method actor. He had to train.
Oh, yeah.
It was great.
Well, we got a crew episode. We got the hotline. The hotline is hot.
Ooh, the hotline is hot.
Hot. It's very hot, Tex. I can't tell you how hot this hotline is.
I hope it's hot because my feet are kind of cold.
Oh. The glacial chill.
But I'm also not wearing socks.
I like your theory, John, that there's just a bunch of gold coins under the barn that are changing the thermodynamics of the concrete.
I think what there is that the whole foundation is built out of gold bars, and the gold is conducting the cold faster into their feet. So if we just crack this, then we'll see gold.
Everything's turning up, Wellborn.
The Power Athlete movie.
How hilarious would that be if we crack the floor? We're like, hey, what's that?
There's always money in the banana stand.
Exactly. Arrested Development. Let's do it. Shall we do it?
Yeah.
The hotline's open. We got a voicemail here, fellas. That number to the hotline is 929-464-464.
0.
929-ING.
0.
That's right. Today we have a voicemail that we are going to play. What is our listener's name? Did he leave it? Matt from Delaware. Here we go. And enhance.
Hey, Luke, Tex, and John. This is Matt in Delaware. My question relates to nutrition, and I'm hoping you guys could break down why does food quality matter. So why would it be better to eat grass-fed beef instead of, grain-fed grocery store beef? Why is food quality more important than, just macros? Why does, if it fits your macros, not work? Or why is it not optimal? All right, I'm out. Thanks, guys. Bye.
In a short question, there's a lot to unpack there. Mm-hmm. And I mean, the very first one, obviously food quality matters, and food quality is always going to trump. If you're trying to, hit your macros with beer, potato chips, and beef jerky, it's obviously going to give
fries.
A less positive effect than if that looked like something that was more nutrient dense. But let's just dispel the first one. I mean, Peter Ballerstedt, we had him on the podcast.
Episode 152.
152. We were big into the, grass-fed, pasture-raised meat as being, I guess we could say, healthier and more nutrient dense. And we used to use words like omega-3s and a whole bunch of stuff. And what we ended up having is we had Peter Ballerstedt on, who is the world's foremost forage agronomist.
I think so.
That's how we pronounced it. Mm-hmm. And we asked him straight up, is there a difference between what you get at the grocery store and what you get grass-fed? And his comment was, if you're eating red meat for omega-3s, we got problems.
Right. So it was yes, however.
Yes.
Right. I remember getting off that one and we're like, whoa, wait a minute.
We've been beating the war drum.
Yeah. So I think his comment was like, if you, for example, you're one of these paleo folks who are like, counting your almonds and only eating grass-fed beef, if you eat a handful of almonds, you ultimately offset the benefits of almost like 16 ounces of grass-fed 80-20, right?
Yeah.
Was this something like that, John?
Yeah, because the omega-6, if you ate like some walnuts, he said if you want to eat something for omega-3s, have some salmon.
Yeah.
He did make a distinction, though, that there was a difference between wild and farm-raised fish. But when it came down to grain-fed, grass-fed, the whole deal, the better question is, are you eating meat?
Yes.
And if you are, then you can start kind of looking for the nuance. Do you like the taste? Mm-hmm. There's a sustainability play. I mean, and I think at that point we really pivoted to being like, the question isn't whether or not you're having grass-fed meat. It's
are you eating beef?
Are you eating beef?
Right.
And are you consuming it in high enough quantities to be able to sustain muscle mass and increase performance and all the other jiggy stuff?
Well, I want to draw a little fence, right? Because it's questions like these that there's some assumptions I think we're making. But do you need food quality, John, to lose fat?
No.
Okay. So let's say this question from Matt is like, hey, how come why does, if it fits my macros, not get me skinny? Well, that's not true. You can. You can lose weight and lean out eating junk food, right?
Yeah, he said if it fit your macros doesn't work or does work. And it does work. Because at the end of the day, the law of thermodynamics talks about no energy is lost, no energy is dissipated. That if you eat in a caloric deficit, and that's like your daily expenditure burn. If you're eating in a caloric deficit, you will lose weight. Your body doesn't necessarily look and be like, oh, I'm going to lose more weight. Now we also know there's a greater thermogenic effect for protein. But it's not as if your body looks and says, okay, hey, like this grass-fed meat versus this grain-fed. Now, when we start looking at like toxins, micronutrients, and a whole bunch of other stuff, then we start getting into bigger play.
Yeah. So let's say, John, okay, I'm trying to lose weight. I'm doing it if it fits my macros. And all of a sudden, so with that said too, it doesn't always work. What if let's say there's a performance lane in this thing. So you're trying to lean out, lose weight, and perform. And you find yourself deficient in, what do you think? Magnesium, iron, vitamin B, and selenium, copper. Yeah. So these minerals and vitamins now, and you're using, if it fits my macros, but you're deficient in these that are responsible for all sorts of.
How do you know you're deficient in these?
You just kind of because your influencer hero is also. Okay.
So
the point is blood work, right? You got to see what's under the hood.
Yeah, but I also think too that if you're going to the levels of investing in getting blood work that's doing micronutrient testing, you're probably a little farther down the road than the person that's just eating Twinkies.
Right.
So like if you're in that point where you're like, hey, I want to go get some micronutrient testing, you reach out to, Dr. Tom, and next thing you know, you're low in zinc, magnesium, iron, selenium, copper, all these other micronutrients that are important for making testosterone, helping have a healthy androgen profile. You're probably not the dude that's eating, Twinkies, Ho-Hos.
Yeah, for your carbs.
Yeah, for your carbs.
Right.
So I think the problem is that testing, I think, would be more beneficial to people earlier, but they, aren't really ready to make a life change. Now, what's pretty interesting on blood work, regardless of how you get there, blood work improves usually when people lose weight. So that was an interesting one. Like, people have gone in, the blood work's been a little messed up. They've put them on a, hypocaloric diet, which is in deficit. And next thing you know, they lose 20 pounds. They go back with really no change other than the 20 pounds, and they'll go back and get blood work done, and the markers will dramatically improve. So I think that if your goal is to lose weight, eating in a caloric deficit is probably the first thing you have to do. There's no magic foods. There's nothing. It's not like you're going to be able to consume fucking 5,000 calories of bulletproof coffee and still lose weight because it's a magic nutrient.
With that said, though, John, is there a lean, like a body fat percent that is generally true? Like, let's say you're trying to lose weight, you're 12% body fat. You're trying to get to 10%. Yeah. Is it as simple as that?
No.
Now it gets a little different. But if you're at 28, 25, 30% body fat.
Yeah, you have a much bigger margin of error.
Then it's like, okay, hypocaloric is step 1, right? Maybe in 15 to 20?
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, if you're trying to get from 12 to 10 or even below 10% body fat, now all of a sudden we have to start dialing a lot more things.
Yes.
We have to not only be in caloric restriction, we have to be able to eat enough protein to maintain muscle mass. You're going to have to sleep. You're going to have to dial your training. I found that it was pretty easy to stay somewhere between 12 and 15%. To crack to get under that 12, 8, 9, 10, 7, there was a probably orders of magnitude more work that it takes in terms of nutrient timing, training timing, sleep, water. I mean, all the everything
hunger,
has to be
curbing hunger. Or dealing with it. I guess that takes energy, right?
Yeah, I mean the. Paul Carter and I had a really good talk, and we were talking about how long can somebody eat in a caloric restriction. And he's got a pretty good idea. He's like, people can be hungry for about 3 days. And then it's right on that 4th day. Like, it almost makes sense to figure out what your total caloric load is and then just eat that in one meal and then fast the rest of the day to keep underneath. But there's a little bit of, there's a ton of research on refeeds periodically to kind of keep everything kind of humming in the right direction. But I think anybody that tells you, hey, you can lose weight and never be hungry, it's very, very rare that I've met people that are like, man, I just lost, 15 pounds and I was never hungry. Yeah. For me to have lost, and to really lean out, I got to be hungry I got to go to bed hungry more than a few days.
I want to bring up the old school nutrition lecture from CrossFit Football, CrossFit SSA, and then how you
CrossFit ass backwards?
CrossFit ass backwards, and how you structured it, John. And the importance, and I feel if we're going to hand off some actionable feedback for this individual, that presentations was set up in a very logical way, actionable steps, starting with
the presentation was set up in a logical way. The way I gave it was anything but logical.
Right. But ending with macros. So we began with what to eat and protein, and then led on this trail.
Well, we did start with why, technically.
Correct.
Tex.
We really.
So I just want to throw this out there for discussion.
What? That you're forgetting the sequence of the lectures 6 years later?
No, I brought up. I pulled up my record, notes. My photos. I always had to keep photos of this one. Mm-hmm. It was not my strong suit, but.
So I guess, John, the difference in the podcast that's coming up too, Tex, I don't know if you're able to find it. Dr. William Wiley, 133, who wrote, what was his book called? It's Better Than the Steroids, right?
Better Than Steroids.
Yep. And so there's also a lot of technical info in that episode if you really want to go back to the pits. But the idea
his
with
book is good.
The idea with food quality and focusing on food quality is that you have a better chance of curbing or blunting an inflammatory response to food, where when you get to the processed stuff or the quick and really I guess like the Kool-Aids and like the table sugar sucrose and stuff like that, you can trigger an inflammatory response, right? Is that the kind of the shake?
Yeah. He got into a lot of the hormonal like factors for in dieting. But I thought was pretty interesting is, he worked with Jay Cutler and he works with bodybuilders. So those guys are really kind of at the end of the spectrum of this deal on like how they kind of partition their calorie stair stepping. He had a bunch of different ways to kind of approach it. But the big one that at least what I remember from his deal was that what was it? It was the inflammatory. Yeah, you're right. It was the inflammatory deal with sugar. And also like gut issues.
It's just...
Fuck, I got to go back and listen to that one.
I think it was also just having a balanced micronutrient, vitamin, mineral profile.
So yeah, well...
is optimal. So the only way to really do that is a balanced whole food diet.
Well, the other one too is one, protein's very satiating. So like as long as you sit down with every meal and there's a pretty solid amount of protein at every meal, when I talk to people on nutrition and do consults, I'm like, hey, we can get really deep in the weeds on this. But at the end of the day, if you base every meal around protein and then backfill with carbohydrates and fats based on taste, you're usually going to be pretty far ahead. Like if I need you to count calories, I want you to count protein, and then we can use, some other things. And I think as we get more dialed, we can start using, measuring cups and we can start using scales and really kind of dial stuff in. But for the most part, as long as somebody's training pretty heavy, they're eating enough protein and they're eating enough food enough food of a high quality to necessitate gains in the gym. Right. Like if they come in and they're getting stronger every day, they're eating a solid amount of protein, they're recovering, we're usually on the mark. And, I know that sounds kind of, just kind of spraying, but for the most part, you can use the gym as probably the greatest results. The efficacy of how you're eating, and I'm sure this has happened to you guys. You go into train and be like, fuck, I didn't eat enough yesterday.
Yeah.
Or I ate like shit and I feel terrible today. So I think that becomes more and more of an issue too as you age.
Yeah. Where was it going to go with, there's not a real wide spectrum of food quality, is there? Like there's processed and packaged food, and then there's the produce and meat counter at the grocery store, right?
So
like that's it.
Dr. Tom and I had a pretty good discussion. Because I asked him on this, when I just saw him a couple weeks, or geez, it was 2 weeks ago. But I asked him, I was like, why is it that, we're having some of these issues that we see today for because he said over the last 20 years, the amount of people that are micronutrient deficient in things they shouldn't be is like gone through the roof. So like our ability to absorb, I'm like, is that gut inflammation? And his thing is that 100 years ago, the food was probably 10 to 12 times more nutrient dense. Like if you sat down and said, hey, I'm going to eat, this serving of this, there was about 10 times the nutrients in that thing. Like let's say you have a cup of kale or you have an apple or whatnot, and you're looking at it.
So even in the produce,
the meat, everything. He's like, it's the proteins, it's the carbs, it's the produce. It's like, the places that you're getting these is so much higher. Or he goes, there's the 100 years ago. So his thing was, the reason that you see like these old time strongmen and some of these other guys, and you're like, man, those guys were so jacked. And obviously there was no drugs at the time. Like how did they look like this? And Tom's deal had to do more with like more physical work, especially at a younger age, and much more nutrient dense food and the lack of processed food. So he's like, just over the last 20 years, he even said, well, in the 20 years we've been working together, but he said in the 30 years, he said the amount, like when he tests people, the things that he never saw are all of a sudden happening, in big numbers.
Well, I guess that's part of like scaling up agriculture and like mass producing or mass farming practices, right?
That's the big thing with regenerative farming.
Right.
I mean, we did a pretty extensive thing with those guys at Rome Ranch for that turkey 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And they talked about regenerative farming and stripping out the nutrients and being able to get the ground nesting birds back and the animals. I mean, just what we've done here in our pastures by letting the horses out and then dragging the harrow and breaking it all up. I mean, I'm sure you guys have seen there's like hundreds of birds. There's thousands of birds, and those birds come in. And like those birds really working within that poop in the land, That's like the magic, because they eat, they dig through it, they, what grubs, worms, whatever, and then the nitrogen. I mean, it's.
Well, do you need us to poop in the field too?
Well, I thought you already did that.
Well, Friday's Field Strong, we get to do the Hera.
Oh God!
Start programming that once PAMC's over. For more on sustainable farming, we had
You just call me a moron?
Bobby Gill from the Savory Institute on episode 316. Which is a fun one.
And I guess I'm trying to think like a normie, John, going to the grocery store, like where it's like, where food quality seems like a daunting thing to like acquire.
Well,
right?
the real simple one is, and we've talked about this ad nauseum, but also like at the seminar, anybody that went to the CrossFit Football always heard us talk about Roy G. Biv. Red, orange, yellow, blue, indigo, violet.
Scoop of yellow.
So when you go look at food quality, when you're looking for some diversity within your micronutrient approach, you have to eat for different colors. So when you go to the grocery store, be that modern hunter gatherer, and I want you to find like the deepest purple, the biggest colors, the reds, the greens, and I want you to have like a rainbow on your plate. If you look and all you see is like white and brown, like that's.
Or like, I'm just thinking like, are people buying fish sticks? Like, oh, I got to get my fish in. Do you like fish sticks?
I love fish sticks.
Gay fish?
I like the idea of fish sticks.
Believe me, so do I. But like, is that where it is? I mean, if you're dining out 5 nights a week, it's hard to find quality food dining. Like if you're going to the market and you're buying foods, like try to live off packaged foods, try to live off fast foods. It's just going to be a bad recipe. You got to learn how to cook and eat real foods and add color and variety, right?
I remember the bodybuilder dudes I used to train with back in when I was playing. I used to train with this guy named Caesar and Brian. And during the off season, when they were trying to get as big as they can, they were like shakes, packaged foods. They ate all this. And the minute that they were like, hey, today starts my contest prep, all of a sudden it was like meal prep. They had like chicken and rice. And I'm like seeing this switch of these guys like killing shakes, bars, the whole deal. Next thing you know, they're all like kind of like small Tupperware. And I'm like, what's up with the change? And their comment was, you can't get jacked on that shit. The only way you get really lean, you get jacked, is by eating real foods, because it ramps up, the metabolism, the thermogenic effect of not only the protein in this, I mean, the chewing. I mean, there's a bunch of different factors, but those guys, and they didn't know necessarily the science behind it, but they knew that they got dramatically better shaped, leaner, stronger, got better off eating real food. So my comment was,
best practice.
Why not just eat real foods all year round? And their deal was like,
what are you, an idiot?
Yeah, I was like, well, that's, there a lot of work goes into this. And to be able to contest prep like this for 12, 14 weeks, like it's fucking a lot of work. And I'm like, well, yeah, all this shit's a lot of work. Like, why wouldn't you just do it right?
Yeah. And I guess, so for food quality in terms of a macro, let's say, like if it fits my macros, your best proteins are going to be animal proteins. If it has a face, mother, soul, ran, swam, or flew, it's called protein. And like, that's so easy to find and so easy to cook. So there's protein. Your carbs, we like to say veggies, roots, tubers, bulbs, seasonals, ideal if you really are one of those. But even if you're buying out of season and you're like, you have...
Man,
is it a bold statement, John, to say you have to eat a lot of out of season vegetables to hit like a toxicity on something?
I think the problem is that people get stuck. Like you go out to dinner and you're like, oh, they have asparagus. Let me get asparagus. So I think you have to look for variety. Like we found Japanese sweet potatoes the other day.
Oh yeah,
and we cooked those big purple sweet potatoes up. And I haven't had those in a while, and I was like smashing them.
I love those things. I had some too. Gave to Tex. Tex said it tastes like dirt.
No, I didn't.
Yeah, you did. You said this tastes like dirt.
That's because you rubbed it in the dirt before you gave it to him.
Obviously.
But like it's not that complicated. I think the problem is people are intimidated. When you walk in, go to the vegetable aisle and just kind of like, beets, carrots. They always have like the prepackaged thing of the multicolored carrots. Grab those, get some form of cruciferous vegetables.
Kale.
Kale, asparagus, spring mix, broccoli. Yeah. And just kind of mix it up.
Cauliflower. It's my worst.
I especially love when they they try to fool you that cauliflower can be like, oh, this is cauliflowered rice or cauliflower pasta. And you're like, this isn't the same thing.
Garbage flour.
We made last night, I made dinner for the kids, and which will basically be their lunch and their snack and dinner tonight. 4 pounds of ground beef and I had a bunch of gluten-free noodles and some tomato pasta sauce.
What's your gluten-free noodle go to? Like a rice noodle?
I think they're like the kind of the thicker rice noodles, so maybe they're Thai. So I cooked those up, mixed them and all that, put it all in a big pot and let it simmer. Dude, the kids absolutely slayed it.
Callie wrote a cool article from way back on the Roy G. Biv and different pigments and then the nutrients associated. I will be sure to link that up in the show notes.
Solid.
Awesome.
Number two, that I'm kind of, as I'm reflecting on my journey into, I guess, how we eat, John, which is like you said, Whole Foods every day, just most of the year. I remember being overwhelmed if I couldn't get, like it was all or nothing, right? I had to get the cleanest versions of all food, or it would just revert to like macaroni and cheese early on in this thing, not realizing that like, and it was back in like the grass-fed beef day, wild caught or free range chicken, wild caught fish. And like, if I wasn't willing to buy those, or
you just said, fuck it, I'm going to eat fucking Kraft macaroni
there was no
and
check
cheese.
down. There was no willingness to check down.
Dude, extremely common when you're first introduced to a new behavior change.
But,
so that was me.
All or nothing.
But isn't it like the 80-20? Like I think I think that there's always got to be an 80-20. Like Killy likes these protein cookies that are made with pea protein, and they actually have like 20 grams of protein in them. They got like 18 grams of carbs, and dude, they're super like pretty good. And she'll eat them, and I'm always like, give me some of those. And I'll like, they're kind of like at Whole Foods. They're like
baked
purple.
or packed.
No, they're like individually packed. They put them in her. She puts them in her lunch for a snack. Dude, things like that. I look at it and I'm like, it's not ideal, but like I would much rather have her eat this as a
Than
snack
Chips Ahoy.
than something else.
Yeah, and I'm with you on that too, John. That's probably where it's literally all or nothing. If I'm going to go into that route of, let's say, a
Treat.
packaged food or treat or snack, I rarely do it. But when we do, it'll be something like that. Like the best choice possible. And I know there's like, it's just not, it's very rare for our family to dig into stuff like that. But I don't know, man. Like, what do normies think on that?
I don't know. I don't know.
Do they green light?
I mean, we only know the crazy people that call in on our podcast.
Yeah, how true. Do they eat the cookies every day? Are they eating the crackers every day?
So the girls
like glutino every day?
So like whatever we eat for dinner, we either make extra or we save, and then that becomes the kids' lunches.
Right.
And so when we went to do like parent-teacher conferences, we went to the first one, and both of the teachers were like, we want to eat your kids' lunches. Like they were so like, she's like, I'm like amazed. Like, where did you guys come up with this and this? And Kate was like, it's just whatever we ate the night before. Yeah. And she's like, you guys eat like that every night?
Yeah.
And I was like, well, it's not that complicated. You get a big bag of like kale or whatever the green stuff is. You put in a pot, little olive oil, let it cook down a little. And I'm like, and then we either barbecue or cook some type of meat. It's either going to be beef, some fish. I'm going to say it, chicken.
I'm in on the thigh.
Elk, if we find it. So like, we try to rotate through the different meats. Like we had, I think I had pork for 2 days in a row. We had, we got these big like pork shoulders and cooked them in the crock pot with like a bunch of green chili, kind of like the old days when we used to do that.
I dig the swine.
So I did that and it was super lean. Oh, dude, it was so good.
Where was it going to go?
Do you remember we were on that crock pot binge?
Yes, I do.
Dude, there was like 3 years there where they're like the crock pot literally ran nonstop in my house. Yeah. Like we burned up 3 of them.
Dude, I remember when you blew my mind and I came over and I don't know the scenario other than you're like, no, I just keep putting meat in it. I don't clean it. And I was like, you can do that? And it was just like, you're like, at least 7 days. And then like, we'll clean it after 7 days or something like that. You're like, it just gets all juices and like I'm salivating right now.
I am too. Cause it's actually amazing.
Then Nate blew my mind when he was like, oh yeah, I crock pot my tri-tips. I was like, what? I was only doing chuck roasts and then like leveled up the tri-tip.
I've got carnitas Frontera cooking right now.
That is my go-to. Like, John, do you do? Have you ever done the Frontera pack of carnitas? It's pretty good.
I'll have to look at it.
I'll bring one in for you tomorrow.
Yeah, it's just the pork shoulder from HEB. drop it in, and then 1 pack of this thing. And then if you're a baller, which I am, text, do you crisp?
I crisp now.
Yeah, you got to broil that sucker afterwards and crisp it up. Ooh.
We did chicken. What were they? Chicken thighs.
Acceptable.
We put them in like a roasting pan, and I did them with salt and pepper, and then I like baked them. I think at like 425 for like 40 minutes, and then I broiled them for like 3 minutes.
Skinless?
And so, no,
Or
with the
bone
skin,
in?
with the bone.
Yeah, yeah.
And they were like super crispy on top, and the kids, dude, were killing those.
So the secret to my chicken thigh recipe is shameless plug, totally unsolicited, tacked calories, fire salt.
Dude,
on
I'm with you.
boneless, skinless chicken thighs. And same thing, 425 for like 15, 20 minutes. And that's it. Like, so it is like so easy.
Our boy Casey and that tech calories.
Yeah.
Is
Second
awesome.
secret.
We'll fire
is,
FYR salt if y'all want to dive in.
And then second secret to chicken thighs is, have you ever marinated in apple cider vinegar?
No.
So it's like if you are a vinegar, like if you like sea salt and vinegar chips, for example, like if you like that little hint of vinegar, it's a nice little bonus in there.
So the other one we've been doing is I've been either browning the meat and doing like the meat sauce for the kids. But the other one I do is I'll make meatballs and I cook them in the pressure cooker.
Okay.
All right. So the pressure cooker, like the fast cooker. So I'll cook the meatballs in there, and then I'll do the gluten-free noodles, throw in a little tomato sauce, and then I'll pour those in and then kind of like heat it all up. And that comes out really good too. But the other trick too, and I don't know if you guys are doing this, but always put a little coconut oil in when you steam your rice. So I put a little coconut oil in the white rice, and then when you steam it, and then you make extra, you put it in the refrigerator, and if it sits in the refrigerator for like 12 hours, then it becomes that starch-resistant rice. And actually, the calories magically disappear.
That's right.
Wow.
It's like potato chips, right? Like in corn chips.
So like it actually, I think
they don't
cuts the calories in half, I think is the way Rob Wolf explained it to me. So so like you can, if you're kind
go
of
ham on.
Well, if you like hit your macros and you were to eat or hit your total caloric or total volume of food, like, hey, I need to eat a cup of rice or half a cup of rice, you can eat that and still be in caloric deficit.
Now I do want to pick Rob's brain on, let's say you have level 4 food lust with corn chips and salsa, and you're eating them like a starving dog. Like, is there a net calorie balance if you're like really ferociously eating corn chips?
Yeah.
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
And potato chips. I'm a pretty big potato chip guy.
Intent. You know what I find? Just don't buy that stuff.
Oh, duh.
I like, if I can't control it, I'm not buying it.
Oh God. So Ashley has her little snack corner, which is those things. And she'll have like 4 chips with lunch. And then I'll come home with food lust one day. And she'll just like,
she finds like ripped open bags, crumbs everywhere.
She sees me like drinking the bag. She's like, are those my chips? I'm like, yeah, get these out
She's
of
like,
here.
I
dude.
have my name written on those chips.
She does label maker and everything.
So my wife will weigh like when she does corn chips, she'll weigh the corn chips, and so she'll know exactly how many chips she has. And so then what she started doing was weighing the bag, and then she would eat them out and then weigh the bag again and then do the math. And then all of a sudden she's like, have you been eating my chips? I'm like, maybe. I'm like, why? She's like, the bag's lighter. I'm like, by how much? She's like, over half.
I faced the RAF once. There was just a little side bowl of chips. I'm thinking nothing of it, and got a talking to during the party.
She's like, "Are those?" My wife is, and I wonder if this is like little people. She's like very hyper worried that she's not going to somehow get food, and I'm like, "Well, you know what?
Well, she is around you and me and McQuilkin, who are like, why are we so hungry?
Seafood diet.
That's the way to go.
But ladies and gentlemen, I think we crushed this one.
We knocked it out. If you got more questions, hit us up.
For sure.
And plenty of resources that we'll provide in the show notes of the episodes and articles on powerathletehq.com.
That's right. So if you got a question, call us. We'll solve your problems. 929-464-464.
0.
929-ING-ING.
0.
Until next time. Bye.
Now it's time for you to empower your performance. Head to powerathletehq.com/training to choose from a number of programs to meet your specific performance goals. And if you like to break a mental sweat too, visit academy.powerathletehq.com and become a real stakeholder in you or your athlete's success. Until next time, bye!